Thank you, JD, and thanks everybody for coming. This is my first day in Nebraska. Well, I arrived yesterday on the airplane, but this has been wonderful. I've given four. This is my fifth talk today, and it's the fifth subject. So I've given four different talks already. This is number 5, so I may not make any sense. I hope I make some sense. Anyway, I'm delighted to be here, and I'm thankful that you all came out. I have that book that JD mentioned, 12 Arguments for Sanity, Defending Marriage. I thought that I'd back up a little bit today and talk about some of the things I see as a father of a couple of kids, and also somebody who's been involved in the homeschooling movement in Rhode Island for many years, and as the professor. I get these 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. And I've been teaching them for a long, long time. Not the same ones. And I see that there are problems. And now, you may know that, you probably have heard, as Catholics here have heard, there's this synod going on in Rome about the family, and one of the bishops brought up one of the parables of Jesus, a very powerful parable, but I think misapplied. He said that when it comes to divorced and remarried Catholics, we need to apply the wisdom of Jesus, who said, "What man is there among you who, having 100 sheep, and finding that one has gone astray, will not leave the 99 and go get that one that's been wandering in the woods, and bring it back home and rejoice." It seems to me not to describe the situation that we're in, so I'm going to alter the words of this parable, which I think, I hope will more accurately describe what's going on. What man among you, having 100 sheep, and finding that one has wandered off into the woods, will not leave the 99 with hirelings, who have allowed the wolves to enter the fold, and the wolves are greedily ripping apart the bellies of these sheep, while the hirelings roast the meat on spits. And, having gone forth to find the one, will arrive and find that it is already dead, and will not hug himself and say, "Well, I did my best." That's more like the situation that we find ourselves in, I think. Because nobody is in good shape. We're not talking about the people who don't need a physician as opposed to the sinners who are in desperate need of a physician. Everybody's a sinner. That's always been the case. Everybody is in need of the physician. But the society around us is so chaotic that I think it's madness to suggest that there is this bank of safe sheep over there. Not after what I'll call the lonely revolution. I don't call it the sexual revolution anymore, except for shorthand. I call it the lonely revolution. We live in a lonelier world than human beings have ever known. I mean, it's not natural in human existence to not know the names, even the names of the relatives, the grandparents and the parents of people who live next door to you or 2 doors down on either side. It's not natural. That's what we have. And we have it not just because we're mobile. We have it because we've allowed transience to enter into what should be the most permanent relation of all, the relation of man and woman in marriage. When you sow transience there, then whole neighborhoods are corrupted from within, and nobody knows anybody anymore. It's the lonely revolution because young people growing up in this very soon learn that members of the opposite sex are not to be trusted. So that by the time they're 22, 23 years old, they've already racked up a history. If they have fallen afoul of the moral law, they've racked up a history of dreadful experiences. Sometimes there's a little bit of glory and a little bit of gold sparkle along with the dreadful experience, but ultimately everyone crashes. And this is to prepare them for marriage. The other ones who try to stay within the bounds of the moral law are also home all the time. and leading lonely lives. And nobody pays attention to that at all. It is insanity out there. That's why I said that the hirelings have gotten into the fold. They've invited the wolves in. They're tearing the sheep apart and they're roasting the meat. It's complete chaos. Well, so now what do we do about this? Now, there are some in my church, not everybody here is Roman Catholic, I think. But those of you who are not Catholic may be aware, hear these things out there, that there's something over here called the church's teachings regarding sex. Well, they're rather old-fashioned. They come from the New Testament. And then there's something over there called the church's social teaching. And those are snazzy because they come from theologians who, some of them are still alive right now. We just can kind of just move on over there. That stuff will take care of itself eventually, but that's where, of course Catholic social teaching is no such. That's the social teaching of the Catholic Church. And if you don't understand what a family is, what a marriage is, what children are for, what men and women are for, who they're for, why the family is called by Pope Leo the domestic society, all right? He's not just using fancy phrase. If you don't understand any of that, don't even talk to me about wages and price controls and other sorts of things like that, which no one here may be a real expert in, because you don't understand what that business is for. It's for the support of the marriage and the families. You don't have that. You have nothing. You have tried to construct a building in midair. It doesn't work. So anyway, our kids are brought up in this chaos. I see it in their faces, especially the ones who have come to me from public school. Hate to say it, but they look sullen. Now these are good kids. I get along with them. I have nothing to say against them. I'm just looking at people who have been hurt. I'm looking at people who've been scorched. It is as if their souls were bathed in acid for at least 4 years. They have come to believe that human history is largely a sorry tale of oppression, misery. There are no heroes in it anymore except for Che Guevara. There's nothing good that one sex can say about the other. Nothing. And yet they're supposed to do all of the human and ordinary things, like fall in love and get married. It's madness. So what do we do about this? Now, their first inclination, unfortunately, I think, because people don't want to admit the enormousness of the problem. So we rather think that the real problem with that we're dealing with here is with that little group over there that has some particular problem. Okay, but it's not so. Everybody's got this problem because everybody's lived through the lonely revolution. Everybody's been scorched by it. The people that I think we need to focus on first of all are children, all of them. Okay, all of them. We just got to be thinking about their welfare first. First, grown-ups, we can think about them later, but the children have to come first. And they are not living in a comfortable farm with the 99 sheep all being healthy, while the shepherd is going out looking for that lost one. That's not the case. They are living in a world in which there is not one scorched stone upon another. They're living in a horrible place. We're too used to it. You live with an open sewer running through your midst. After a while, you don't notice it anymore. I notice it sometimes because I go out of my way to pick up ancient textbooks written 100 years ago. And when I do, it's, holy cow, this is a message from a different planet. It's a completely different universe. You want to be creeped out. Go to YouTube and watch an old game show from 60 years ago. Watch the people. Look at them. Look at how they react to members of the opposite sex. I'm not talking about holiness, saintliness here. I'm just talking about normal humanity. And then imagine what those people, if they could be transplanted to our day, would think of us. They would think that we had gone barbaric and mad, quite mad. You want fun? Watch What's My Line episodes from the early 50s. And then weep because you say, these are not saintly people. These are just ordinary people. Ordinary sinners such as the world always produces. And yet, they're kind to one another. And the men like the women, and the women like the men, and the women call the men boys, and the men call the women girls. People have this normal delight. That's not the case anymore. The kids, our kids, we cannot say about them, listen, our kids are going to be soldiers in this great fight. They have to know what it means to meet adversity. They're kids. They don't need to meet adversity when they're kids. They need encouragement. They need a reward. They need praise. What all good kids long for, that slap on the back, is, attaboy, you've done good. They need assistance, and they're getting none of it. They get none of it. Where are all those programs that we used to have, which would bring up a boy in healthy and wholesome boyhood and get him comfortable with, boyish activities with other guys and bring him on the path to manhood? Where are the same things for girls? Where are they? They vanished. They're all gone. Your kids who are trying to live by the moral law, do they get celebrated anywhere? Are they praised for this? Are there events specially for kids who just are trying to meet members of the opposite sex and have fun? Is that happening anywhere? The Catholic Church used to sponsor those things all the time. Where is it all? I went to Benedictine College. That's a little place south of here. Yeah, south of here. I'm getting my plain states mixed up momentarily. And it's a beautiful school, devoutly Catholic. And the students told me that there is a swing dance on that campus every week. And they said, that's just the swing dance. So there are other dances too? Oh yeah, we have dances every week. So naturally, the kids have something wholesome and healthy and cheerful to do, right? They are at least, I don't want to say rewarded exactly, but there are grown-ups in charge who understand that these kids live in a bad world and they need a little bit of help. And you gotta bring them together in wholesome ways. You can't just assume that, well, kids had a good upbringing, the kids had a great upbringing in the church. The kid is living in a sick world. And everybody is lonely in this world. And a lot of those kids are going to fall into sins that they need not fall into at all, just because everything around them is insane. And then we could say, well, Christ forgives it. Well, yeah, Christ forgives everybody, but why do we put them in that situation? Grown-ups used to take up the responsibility to shepherd these kids through the difficult years, to give them lots of wholesome activities. That's all gone. Where's the church? Where's the church when it comes to recognizing and honoring people who have kept the moral law and who marry then and do as my mother and father did? And people say, did it ever happen? Yes, it happened. It happened many times. It happened more often than not that they went to the marriage bed pure, without having had any liaisons before or wrecked hearts. They had obeyed the moral directive. Not everybody, but a lot of people. Where's the church honoring them? Not because they're prigs and they want praise, because it's almost impossible these days to get them to that position. They need help. And some of that help is going to be in the form of encouragement and, yes, and praise. They need it. We are not talking about saints here. We're talking about young people and children even. So one of the things that seems to have been broken, I mentioned this in one of my talks today on a very different subject. If you can imagine can imagine children, back in the old days, there used to be these things that walked around on 2 feet. They were kind of small. They were called children. They came in 2 forms, boys and girls. And they used to play in a region called outside. My wife just sent to me something on Facebook. Some woman allowed her child to sit on a bench in the streets, off the sidewalk, the little suburban subdivision where they lived. And because the girl was unsupervised, I think the girl was 10, one of the neighbors called Child Protective. You saw this, Child Protective Services. What are you doing? That's why God made the outdoors for human beings to be in, and especially kids. Anyway, imagine that there are these kids and they play outside, right? What they do is pass down from one generation of kids to the next generation of kids a whole host of games, right? And a lot of these games were never taught to the kids by grown-ups, right? Did a grown-up teach you how to play hide and seek? No, you learn it from the other kids. Kids even have their own dialect they pass it on, right? Now, imagine that this has happened for hundreds of years, and suddenly, because of our weirdness, because of something strange that we're doing for the first time in human history, the chain has been broken, and you get a generation of two of kids who have not learned those games. Then when you say now to kids, why don't you go outside and play? You're assuming the existence of something that has ceased to be. Well, okay, I go outside and play. What do I do? Don't you know any games? No, I don't know any games. Now, the same thing, an analogous thing can be said for the relations between boys and girls, and then youths and maidens, lads and lasses. Because they too were passed down in part by the young people themselves from generation to generation. Also with some considerable assistance coming from responsible grown-ups. Imagine that that has been broken, okay? I don't know why it took me so long to discover this. I long ago, speaking to a men's group at my college, Providence College, I begged them, I said, listen, you guys, there are these beautiful young women out there, and they're good. I mean, these kids, these girls are devout Catholics, and they want to get married, and they're very good looking, and they're friendly, they're fun to be around. Why don't you ask them on a date? And it didn't occur to me until very recently. They don't know how. I might as well be asking them to play Red Rover, Red Rover. What's that? They don't know. What are the rules? They don't know. What do I do? What's she expect of me? What happens next week? Where do I take her? What does it mean? All that's been lost. The very language of calmly and friendly way, a charming way, sometimes a very exciting way, getting to know a member of the opposite sex when you're young, that's all been gone. It's been blasted to smithereens by the sexual revolution. Thank you, sexual revolution. People are lonelier than ever before as a consequence. So what do you do? That chain's been broken. Now what do you do? Well, you have to forge the links anew. No society has ever had to do such a thing before, because before us, people did actually figure out how to get the young people together. And the young people figured it out on their own. Now, it was something, I don't know, it happened naturally. You didn't have to go to school to learn about it. But now what do? Now we have to do something artificial. Well, there's nothing for it. It has to be done. The kids can't do it of themselves. It's gone. So we have to do it. We have to help them out. All those things that were natural and wholesome and delightful, merry in the Shakespearean sense of the word, flirtations, innocent and harmless and perhaps not necessarily going anywhere, puppy love between boys and girls. It's all gone. It's all been, what's left is best not even mentioned. What do we do to bring that back? What do we do to build back up something that was good and ordinary and human? So I would suggest one thing. Yeah, moving from point to point here. I sometimes ask my students, do a little thought experiment. It's actually uncomfortable for them. I don't ask them for the results. I just ask them to do this experiment in their minds. I say, I want you to think about the opposite sex. Most of the poetry that I teach in my Renaissance literature classes is love poetry, because that's most of what they wrote. You know, they wrote love poetry all over the place. We read a lot of love poetry. That's something, by the way, that is also gone. An 800-year tradition of sweet love lyrics vanished. Think about the opposite sex and think about everything that makes somebody from the opposite sex beautiful, admirable. Some special quality that people in the opposite sex have that makes them excellent. Okay? What gifts do they in particular bring? Think of all of the good things that you can say about a fine member of the opposite sex, fine young man, a gracious young woman. Think about those things. List them in your mind. This is of course, is something that they are never taught to do in any of our schools. They're taught to despise the opposite sex, especially to despise boys. Think about that. That'll take you a long time if you're really honest. You know? I mean, if you're really honest, if you really look at members of the opposite sex, you know, what the heck would we do without them? Feminists, for instance. Feminists, where would you get food for your table? You drive a car, feminist professors. Where do you think the metal came from for that car? Who do you think went down into the depths of the earth to fetch it? You don't have to do work like that. You get to teach sociology. Somebody had to do that work, and it was a man. Well, how about it? How about let's look with gratitude at what the opposite sex brings? And that's quite a lot. That'll take you a long time. And then the second part of the thought experiment is to consider all the rotten things about your own sex. And that'll take you a long time too. And once you're done with that, you're in no mood to complain. Maybe you're in no mood to think that you should have married somebody else either. My best advice, my best marriage advice is just one simple line. You're no peach either. It's something, I mean, my gosh, I've seen marriages break up, and I know one person is more at fault than the other. I wouldn't want to be, I know that person was more at fault, but hey, you're no, we all have our faults, eh? What needs to be encouraged in our young people is a high and noble view of manliness and womanliness. Those words need to be turned to our vocabulary. It's a good thing to be boyish. We have that word in the English language. Even a 60 or 70-year-old man who is boyish, you're praising that person. So too with 60, 70-year-old woman, you call her girlish, that's praise. Because there's something irrepressibly youthful about that. I've met some pretty girlish 70-year-old nuns today. They're all over the place in the Diocese of Lincoln. It's wonderful. I wish some of them had taught me when I was a kid in school. Why not? Why not be happy that the boys are boys and the girls are girls? And if there are some kids who are confused about this, well, help them out. It's not that difficult. Help them out. If they're not good at sports, well, they're good at something else. Help them out. It's not a rocket science. People have been able to do that before. And people have also been able to lend each sex a vision of where they're going. Manliness. Womanliness. Those are terms of high praise. Now, they go with terms that are not necessarily of high praise. Terms that detract from someone's character. For instance, someone who is mannish. That's not manly. That's someone, sometimes a woman, who struts and poses and tries to throw the weight around, trying to be or appear more than he or she is. We don't like that. Womanish, we don't like that either. Somebody who won't speak to you frankly if he's got a problem, but has to speak about it behind your back. Sly, indirect, womanish. So feminists will say that the language in this case is all stacked against women. That's not true. Womanly is a term of high praise. Womanish is criticism. Manly, that's a term of high praise. Mannish is criticism. Why not reintroduce to young people the goodness and the beauty of being a boy, being a girl, and then being a man and being a woman, especially since the man is for the woman and the woman is for the man. Every time you talk about boyishness and girlishness and manliness and womanliness, the sight must be the final goal. Even our priests here who will not be married are spiritual fathers to us. The man in his manliness is in a particular way for the woman, and the woman in her womanliness is in a particular way for the man. And they fit together. Everybody knows this. You cannot go to a real wedding and not see immediately that the people, regardless of what they say when you get into a political discussion with them, regardless of what they think they believe, when you catch them at moments of high emotion, they are behaving like men and women, and they behave like men and women have always behaved, and there is no mistaking the one for the other. They show it in their posture, they show it in the way they laugh, the way they speak, the way they tease one another. Men tease women in a way that's different from the way men. It's like two people in a dance. We need to give our young people that vision. It used to be given to them as a matter of course. They used to meet it everywhere they turned. In their literature classes and English classes in grade school, they would see examples of gallant boys doing brave things, of girls sprightly, sensible, maybe sometimes, often more sensible than the boys. They would see these things and would learn to enjoy the other sex, to be content with their own sex, to honor the dignity of their own sex, but to be attracted to the other. Now, that's not just a bodily thing. That happens automatically in most people. It's a spiritual thing, to love the girlishness of girls and the boyishness of boys. We need to give them that because they're not going to get it anyplace else. Just as they're not going to get CYO basketball games to go to because there aren't any, as they're not going to go to all of the swing dances that are held because no swing dances are held, the square dances that are held that can bring whole generations of people because those are not there either. All the ice cream socials, all the ordinary and normal things, low pressure things. The boy can simply say to the girl, hey, you want to go with me to the ice cream social? She says, okay. And it's not a big deal because everybody is there with somebody, right? We're going to have to teach the kids how to do that all over again. Sometimes some of us are going to have to try to remember how to do that all over again because the chain has been broken. They need to learn again how to love not just this particular person that they're attracted to, but how generally to admire and genuinely to admire the opposite sex, the fact that there are two sexes, to celebrate it, because it is glorious. It's the second to second to faith in God. It's the most glorious feature of human existence, that there are two sexes. Male and female, he created them. In the image and likeness of God, he made them. Male and female, he made them. This is just one little piece, what I've been talking about all day, but in very different contexts. It's just one little piece of building civilization all over again. I don't think at this point we should say we are wondering when Western civilization is going to fall apart. It has fallen apart. I don't believe in this slippery slope. In this sense, we're already at the bottom. When you are so insane that you think that a man can feasibly marry another man, or when you start to when you're reconsidering the porousness of marriage in polygamous relationships, you're not on the side of this slope saying, well, we can carve out our little niche here and we won't fall any deeper. You're already at the bottom. Little children watching a ball game have to be bombarded with commercials selling sex hormones. You're at the bottom. There's pornography everywhere. You're at the bottom. How can it get much worse than this? It's completely insane. After we've reached a certain level, what difference does it make if another bomb falls on that city? There isn't a single wall that's standing or a roof that's intact anyway. You could throw another 50 bombs on, it's not going to look any different. It all needs to be rebuilt. You can't do everything, nobody can do everything, but everybody can do one thing. And the one thing tonight that I want to encourage you all to do is to think about how you can bring those boys and those girls in wholesome, fun way. I'm not talking about theology on tap. There's a place for theology on tap. I'm talking about bowling. Nobody's talking theology while they're bowling. Dancing. I don't think you're going to be discussing Trinitarianism while you're trying to figure out do I go left or do I go right. The things that are normal and human, they need to return. They're gone. If the boys no longer know how to ask the girls out on a date, give them a list and say, this is what you're going to do. Have them pull names out of a hat and say, next week you're going to pull a different name out of the hat, so it won't be high pressure. Just get them together somehow. Get them to be living a more human life. So I'm asking those of you who might have a special leaning this way to do something along those lines. Okay? As I said, not everybody can do everything. And not everybody can do any one particular thing. Maybe you don't want to do that at all. Get away from me. But everybody can do one thing. And this one thing, I think a lot of people can do. This one thing has to be done. And then when you have revived a wholesome enjoyment in one sex for the other sex, then a lot of the questions that we've been asking ourselves for the last 20 years will seem like what they are. Bad dreams. Just weird, insane things floating in the air while you were under the influence of a bad drug. It will all be nonsense, the nonsense that it is. So that's my recommendation for you today. And I don't know if it made any sense, but so it is. It's been a long day for me, but I'll take, as I'm Italian too, I'll be offended if you don't ask questions. Anyway, that's it.